Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, depending on the time zone. This is Daniel, and we're gonna do a learning group, or we continue a learning group for zero knowledge and SNARK application development. And then the today's topic is a little bit more theoretical. It's gonna be polynomial commitments. So first, I have just 2 slides on the learning group. So this is, the plan is that we have like a learning group. I would say I'm not a zero knowledge expert myself either. So the idea is that we learn zero knowledge a little bit more like together during this year. It's gonna be in 25. So throughout this year. The plan is that we have like 1 session every month. Practically, that's gonna be the third Thursday of each month. We start from 6 o'clock in the evening, based on Central European time. It's I think it's like usually it's like 9 o'clock Pacific, but especially this week there's some shifting due to the summertime change basically. So the learning group is a little bit like more like controlled or directed by myself. The idea is that each session is 1 hour. I'm gonna give a presentation basically on different zero knowledge topics, and then we can have like a short discussion basically at the end. I would say 1 hour is not much, but basically, so the idea is that most of the discussion shouldn't necessarily be online. Online, but not necessarily in a meetup or in a call. We can likely discuss like in a chat, for instance. And the best idea is just Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust Discord channel. So the idea is that we can have like a short discussion at each session, but if we have like, or if you need like longer discussions, or if you want to raise like interesting topics, then the best idea is just using the Discord channel from Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So that's the idea. We're gonna cover different topics from zero knowledge proof. I'm mostly like an architect and software developer. I'm not a mathematician. So I'm gonna cover a little bit like some theoretical background as well, especially today and in the next month, in the next session. But basically, I'm like an architect and software developer myself. So we're gonna focus more like on developing systems and then developing applications, and not necessarily covering all the theoretical backgrounds. In the meantime, I hope my network working correctly. I might have like chopping in my voice a little bit, but despite I hope it's gonna be okay. So let me just know if I have any problems with my network. I just try to be slow basically, and if there's like small interruption in my network, then I can likely reiterate all of the topics that you might miss. So again, that's the idea. The coordination is through the Discord channel from Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So if you have like an invitation to the Discord channel from Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust, you can just Google it, or you can find on the page of Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. Basically, under communities, there's like a separate session, which is called Zero Knowledge Learning Group. So basically, the idea that we just gonna do most of the coordination and even discussion and chat here. So again, 1 hour is not much. So if you have like any topics that you can't issue in this 1 hour meetup, then just feel free to join to the Discord channel, and then just feel free to comment things here. Basically, that's the idea. So that's like the major coordination. Of course, we just announce 1 meetup each month on meetup.com. That's I mean, business as usual, I would say. And there's gonna be a repository. There's gonna be a Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust lab for this one. It's still ongoing, but in the meantime, I just created basically one repository on my GitHub account, which just summarizes all of the materials for this learning group. I just basically shared in this chat as well. So if you're in the chat, then basically you can find the repo. And then on the repo, you can find all the information that is necessary, that I'm going to present, or that already was presented basically in this learning group. But again, so the plan is that we're going to have like a lab, an official lab. It's just still ongoing. And then basically, so I start with like theoretical stuffs, but basically we're gonna have like quizzes perhaps a little bit later, and like programming as well, and perhaps programming challenges as well. And then, well, I hope anybody succeed in finishing this year in this learning group. I hope there's gonna be like some LFDT merge at the end. I can't promise for sure, but I will try to organize. So that's the logistics for the year. We started in February with introduction, with theory, with some definitions and building blocks. We are here in March. It's gonna be theory. It's gonna be polynomial commitments. The next section is more like theory again. It's gonna be like interactive oracle proofs. And then we just changed to programming. We're gonna cover two zero-knowledge programming languages. One is Circum, another one is probably Noir. I will just think it over basically. I mean, Noir is pretty popular, but we might have better options as well. And then from September, we're just gonna build applications based on the zero-knowledge stack. So the idea is like having one session on off-chain transactions. Another one is like, for instance, proving solvency of an exchange, then one session on rollups, and then basically we just wrap up everything in December. So that's the plan. It is actually subject to change. So if you just have an idea on a topic, or basically if you just prefer one zero-knowledge programming language over the other one, just feel free to propose things basically in the Linux Foundation Discord channel. Just one thing to consider, especially with the application development, the plan is that we build applications with Hyperledger Fabric. So basically the target platform is gonna be Fabric. I know it's not very much popular to build like zero-knowledge stuff with Hyperledger Fabric, but I mean, Fabric is one of the flagship project from Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So for this reason, I just feel important that if we have like blockchain integrations, and we're gonna have like blockchain integrations at the application development sessions, then basically we use a blockchain which is like a I mean flagship project from Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So that's the logistics for the course, and then the agenda for today is like taking a look a little bit on functional and polynomial commitments. We're not gonna cover all the theoretical basics. Instead, it's gonna be like a flow of topics that is like a little bit like more self-containing. I would say. So I just start with like summarizing a little bit, or wrapping up a little bit the last session. So just summarize like ZK SNARK, what's ZK SNARK, what's the development flow, what are the elements of building a SNARK, what are commitments without any functional or polynomial stuffs. Then we just take a look on functional commitments, then different types of functional commitments. I have one slide on KZG10. It's very much on a high level. Then I have some few slides on protocols with functional commitments, then of course Fiat-Shamir transformation at the end, and then we just close this presentation with like literature links and questions and answers. So I would say that's the agenda for today. I would just stop here for like 2 minutes or 1 minute. If there's like any question which is, which can be answered very fast, then I'm happy to answer it right now. Otherwise, if we have like topics that need to have like a longer discussion, I would propose to have it at the end, where we have like, I would say at least like a 10 minutes or perhaps even 15 minutes questions and answers. So I will just stop here for 1 minute. If there's like any question that can be answered pretty fast, or any questions to the logistics, or any questions to the agenda or to the learning group. Yeah, there's one question in the chat. There's gonna be recording. Each session will be recorded. We're just gonna send basically the slideshow as well. And basically, if we take a look on the repository will be updated regularly as well. So if you just take a look, for instance, you can find the summary of the February session. So you find the slideshow, the recording, the meetup. You can find a quiz. You can find links and literatures and so on and so forth. So same is gonna be true for this session. So you will find basically the match session on polynomial commitment. The slideshow is already linked. The meetup is already linked. Recording will be linked as well, and literature and quiz and stuff like that will be linked as well. Okay. And besides, everything will be available on Discord as well. So I would just encourage everybody just to join to the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust Discord channel, and then just take a look, basically, take a look things there. So let me just share. Actually it is shared. So if I can likely share the GitHub repo here as well. So that's like the GitHub repo. Yeah, so I will try to be as descriptive as it's possible. It's just sometimes difficult for me, so I can't promise everything for this session. I will just try to consider for the next one, basically. Yeah, so if you come to the Discord channel of Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust, there are many channels here, basically. But if you already have access for Discord, there's a section which is communities. I'm just scrolling it down. You find Indie, IROA, special interest groups, and there's a big section which is called community. Another community, you find like Austrian chapter, Africa chapter, and so on and so forth, and meetups, and so on and so forth, workshops. And at the end of the community session, you find zero knowledge learning groups. And that's the zero knowledge learning group, basically. So you find all of the information basically here. You can follow just all of the discussion here. Okay, so I would say that's for the organization, and then let me just plunge into the content. So first, basically, just summarizing a little bit what's the SNARK, or what's the ZK SNARK. SNARK is basically succinct non-interactive argument of knowledge. And what we think of first, we just think of like a model where there's a prover and there's a verifier, and the prover wants to prove something, basically a fact, and the verifier tries to verify if that fact is true without knowing practically the fact itself. So, being a little bit more concrete, what we usually have here, we just have like a computation model. And the computation model might be a little bit tricky. That's sometimes an arithmetic circuit, but nevertheless, that's like a normal computation. So anything can be expressed in arithmetic circuits. But again, it's like a little bit tricky. And this computation model, this arithmetic circuit, has like two inputs, or two different inputs. One is a so-called public input, which is X here, and one is a so-called private input, which we usually call as witness as well. And this computation evaluates to a number, or sometimes we just say it's more like a kind of a property, so it evaluates to 0 or non-zero. So again, if we speak of like prover and if we speak of like verifier, then we think of algorithms. So we have like two different algorithms. One is the prover and the other algorithm is the verifier algorithm. So the prover algorithm just takes basically the public input and the private input and it creates a proof. And the verification algorithm takes like the public input. It doesn't take the private input, but it takes the proof and it accepts or rejects if that proof is or not. But again, basically without knowing the witness, without knowing the private input. Sometimes we have the so-called pre-processing system. So there's like a pre-processing steps before these two algorithms. So we might as well have something which is like a public and a public parameter for a prover and the public parameter for a verifier. So we usually think of like, so that's what we call the argument of knowledge. This proving step is, we can say as that's an argument of knowledge. We like to have this one as non-interactive. Non-interactive means that there's a proof, the verifier accepts or rejects, but there's no interactions between the prover and the verifier. We like it that way because that's what can be used basically in blockchain applications. In blockchain applications, we don't want to have much interactions between prover and verifier. We just want to have a proof that can be put on the top of a blockchain and practically everybody can verify it. So that's what we want basically in blockchain applications. There are a few properties for SNARK or for ZK SNARK. We can say that it's complete if there's completeness means that practically if there's a proof by the prover. So I'm gonna be a little bit unstable. Slow down, and then I have some background voice. So let me just try to. Yeah. Okay. So it should be better. So there are some properties for this SNARK. One is complete. Completeness means if there's a proof, it is accepted by a verifier with very high probability. We have another property which is knowledge sound. Knowledge sound means if the verifier accepts the proof, then the prover really knows kind of a fact, kind of a witness, kind of a secret input that satisfies this computation. So practically it means that malicious prover cannot convince the verifier having something true. And then we have one property which is zero knowledge. Zero knowledge means that the proof reveals nothing from the witness, so the input is secret. It's just important to know that zero knowledge is basically an optional parameter, so we don't necessarily need like zero knowledge. For instance, in rollups, we don't use zero knowledge property of these zero knowledge proofs, I mean of the SNARK proofs. It's because we just use that there's a complex computation which can be verified very fast and in a very small proof size, and it doesn't matter if there's secrecy basically behind. So zero knowledge is usually like an optional property. If we think of like zero knowledge proofs, it's important that we consider like kind of a development flow. So usually we have a problem, if you still remember like Alibaba Cave was an example, but like where's Waldo or where's Wally, that can be like another example. It's like non-mathematical examples. But basically there's like kind of a problem that we want to describe somehow. And again, in the previous slide, that was like a computation. And then if you just think of this computation, there's something which is called the development flow. So we usually try to express our problem, our computation with a high or higher level language. That's like Circum or Noir. But the point is that we always need, especially for the mathematical parts or algorithmic parts, like a lower level abstraction. A lower level abstraction can be like an arithmetic circuit. So this is like an arithmetic circuit. We get like a directed acyclic graph we get like input gates, we get like connections, these are the wires, and then we can have like additions and multiplications. And then basically there's some inputs, and for some input values, we can just basically express or evaluate the result of this arithmetic circuit of this computation. Technically, that's like evaluating a polynomial, or we can see of that's like kind of a polynomial, and then this arithmetic circuit is a kind of a polynomial with its like evaluation receipt. And then from this lower level abstraction, what we usually do, we just try to express these arithmetic circuits or this lower level abstraction with polynomials. One example is like rank 1 constraints. Rank 1 constraints is like A times B equals G, where A and B and G are a fine combination of variables. So for instance, one example is W1 times W2 minus W3 plus 1 equals X1. That's like a lower level polynomial, or that's like a rank 1 constraint or rank 1 polynomial. And then it can be proved that basically such a computation, such an arithmetic circuit can be expressed with like rank 1 constraints as well, or with other kind of polynomials. And the idea that as soon as we have these polynomials, we're just gonna use like deep level mathematical properties for these polynomials to get basically SNARK, to get like zero knowledge proofs. So that's the idea. All of the zero knowledge properties basically came from these from the lower level property of these mathematical polynomials. Just one thing basically that I want to express. So you might wondering if that's always needed to have like such an arithmetic circuit. And then the answer is that, well, basically yes, but despite having this tricky arithmetic circuit, there are like two ways of having arithmetic circuits. So you can have like, so if you have like a complex problem, basically you can express it with like a pretty big arithmetic circuit. So it's doable, but it's just not always convenient. And then there are like programming languages like circuit, where you can describe this pretty huge arithmetic circuit. But there's another way of programming zero knowledge as well, and that's like Z-key VM, Z-key virtual machine. And on a high level, it works that way like a computer. So basically we have like kind of an arithmetic circuit, and the same arithmetic circuit is used pretty much. So it's practically one structured circuit, and this same arithmetic circuit is used several times via states. So that's like a same arithmetic circuit, and there are some states somewhere in the middle, and the same circuit is applied several times, just like as a computer or as a virtual machine, basically. And then as soon as we use practically the same circuit, which describe kind of a virtual machine for some states, basically, then we can build up something which is like more intelligent than programming just circuits, and that's what we call like Z-key virtual machine, or for instance, one example is zero knowledge Ethereum virtual machine. Okay, that's just one hint. I mean, this arithmetic circuits looks pretty bad, but this is so it's not this sole representation. I mean, you can use in a more fancy way, providing like the possibility for even like classical programming languages as well. So with this introduction, we finished the last session somewhere that which are the elements of building a SNARK. And then there are practically 3 building blocks. One building block is a so-called polynomial commitment. That's what we're gonna cover in the next like 4 slides. And then the second building block is the so-called interactive oracle proof. And we have one more trick, which is the so-called Fiat-Shamir transformation. So polynomial commitment is something which is committing to a function from the prover to a verifier, and then opening this function in one point, basically, and then making a proof that basically that point was evaluated in a correct way. That's like a building block of SNARK. Interactive oracle proof extends practically polynomial commitments. It evaluates several polynomials, opening with several points, sometimes in several rounds, and it extends usually one such a polynomial commitment, I mean this building block, to a general circuit satisfiability, and with that you can build up practically, which is a general purpose SNARK, so where you can practically express any kind of problems and make like SNARK or ZK SNARK proofs for any kind of problems or circuits. And last, we have Fiat-Shamir transformation. Fiat-Shamir transformation is a very clever trick, making an interactive proof to non-interactive. So again, I mean, if there's like several rounds of communication between prover and verifier, then that's usually an interactive proof. And of course, we don't like interactive proofs because we just can't use very much with blockchain applications. But there's a clever trick which is called Fiat-Shamir. So Fiat-Shamir transformation can do some of the interactive proof to non-interactive. So let me just continue with commitments. So before plunging to polynomial commitments, let me just cover what's generally a commitment, what's generally a cryptographic commitment. And then this is like the general idea for a commitment scheme. So we have just one sender and one receiver. And then basically we can imagine commitment with the help of an envelope. So we have like two rounds. First, the sender commits something to the receiver in a hidden way for the first round. So we can say this is like Alice, and then this is like Bob, and then Alice, I mean, makes some statements if she likes Bob or if she hates Bob, and she writes this statement into an envelope. She closes that and she sends this to Bob, basically. So that's the first phase. In first phase, the message is not visible for Bob, but in the second step, basically Alice can reveal the message, so she can just reveal if she likes Bob or if she hates Bob. So that's like the second phase, that's like the reveal phase. And the point is that in the second phase, basically the idea is that, I mean, the message is here in the Bob in the envelope as well, so Alice can't deny if she said like I love you Bob or I hate you. So that's the general idea. So you're wondering what's the purpose of such a commitment. Basically, you can have like you can use it like, for instance, in several blockchain or cryptographic protocols. So like let's have like a multi-party protocol. I don't know. Let's play a game, for instance, with some decentralized actors. So let's say then these are the actors playing the game, and then we say that everybody has to pick basically a number between 1 and 10, and the biggest number which was chosen by only one person wins. Okay, so there's here like kind of I don't know, that's like the centralized server for playing the game, for instance. So we can say that everybody just picks a number, and then everybody picks this number into an envelope and sends the envelope to this centralized server. And then that's the first round. That's the commitment phase. And then basically, as soon as we have the commitment phase, we can imagine that this is totally decentralized. So people might wait like several hours and so on and so forth. They might try to cheat a little bit, other guys as well. But as soon as there's a commitment phase, we can say that, I mean, he chose like 10, he chose like 10 as well. And then basically there's like here a 9. The second phase is like a reveal phase. And the reveal phase, everybody just reveals which was the number that they chose. So then they just say, hey, I chose like 10. I chose basically 10. And then I chose like 9. And then basically, as there were two people choosing 10, and one person just choosing 9. And then basically the biggest number that was chosen by one person, that's 9. So this guy wins. And the idea is for commitment that at the second phase, at the reveal phase, you just can't fake basically. You just can't say that, hey, okay, I saw this guy, he chose 10. So I say I didn't choose 10, but I chose just 8 or something. You can't game the system because there's a commitment basically that you chose basically 10. So that's like the idea of a commitment. Generally, it's more extended, and we speak of like cryptographic commitments. It's more theoretic, but basically, commitment is the idea is to choose a value or to commit a chosen value or a chosen statement, keeping it hidden and reveal the committed value later. So again, we speak of like two phases. First phase is the commit phase, where practically the value or the statement that is chosen, that is committed from the sender to the receiver or from the prover to the verifier. And there's a second phase, which is the reveal phase. So during which the value is revealed by the sender, and then from the sender to the receiver. And actually, the receiver can verify that that was basically the original value that was committed in the first round. We can have a few properties. So commitment can be binding. If that's binding, then basically the committed information cannot be revealed. Of course, that's what we like. And it can be binding as well. So the prover cannot fake the committed message, basically. A classical example is like a hash function. I mean, you can think of for the first round, then you can do everything with a hash function. So you have just commit a message, which is basically the SHE hash function evaluation of your message. That's gonna be the commitment. That's what you send in the first round. And in the second one, you just send the original message. And then basically, as the receiver has basically the commitment, which is the value of the hash, then Bob can verify if that was the original message that was committed for in the first round. So that's what commitment. And what we're gonna have, or what we're gonna need in SNARK as a building block, is an extension of these commitments, which is functional commitment. So functional commitment looks that way, that again, we have prover and verifier. That was like sender and receiver in the first round. But basically, the prover gonna basically commit a function. Okay, so the first step is that the prover commits a function, and then basically it's gonna be opened in one point. And then basically there's gonna be a proof. So again, it's like there's gonna be a proof that the opening in this one point is valid. Okay, so it looks usually that way. We usually speak of like function or family of functions, and usually we say we just pick one function from this function family, and the prover chooses one function from this function family and commits to the verifier. So again, commitment means practically that the verifier cannot see the function itself, but later on, the verifier will be somehow convinced that the committed function was used in certain use cases. So again, the prover chooses an F function from the function family and then commits this function to the verifier. That's like a commitment. That's like a commitment of the function. We got here an R that's like random variable. We just need to have like protection against like dictionary attacks. But nevertheless, this is like a commitment. And the commitment is usually, it's a good idea if it's binding. I mean, it must be binding, and it should be binding as well. It's not necessarily should be binding. It's again, if you use like SNARK without the zero knowledge properties, it's not necessary to having the hiding property. If we use like ZK SNARK, of course we need the hiding property. And the verifier has this committed function. Sorry. So as a next step, the verifier chooses basically an X point of this function, and then the verifier chooses this X point randomly, and then it means that the verifier wants the prover to open this function at the X point. So the verifier chooses this X point to the prover, and then basically in the last step, the verifier sends basically the Y, which is like, sorry, I mean this one is Y. So basically sends the Y evaluation of this X point based on that function. So that's the correct. That's the Y equals fx practically. So Y is the evaluation of that committed function at the X point. And then basically the prover sends basically this Y, and then sends a proof, and this proof basically indicates that basically Y is really the evaluation of that X input from the verifier, and then the F function was committed basically originally by the prover to the verifier. And then one more thing, that basically F function is in the function family. So that's basically a functional commitment. And again, it's like a three steps proving verification game, I would say. So first, committing a function. Secondly, the verifier asks the prover to open this function, this unknown but committed function at one point, and then basically the prover sends back basically the Y, the evaluation of this function at that X point, and then basically the prover sends back a proof as well, proving that that point is really the evaluation of that X input, and then basically F is the committed function, and then basically F is in the function family. So that's what a functional commitment, and again, it's like one important building block of a SNARK. There are several types of functional commitments. So we can have like polynomial commitments. That's like for univariate polynomials at most degree D. And there are many possible algorithms for that. And there are many like even deeper mathematical structures. So if we use like some very deep mathematical structures like bilinear groups for this polynomial commitment, then we can use like EZG10. If it's like hash functions, then we can use like FRI. If it's elliptic curve, that's like bullet proofs and so on and so forth. But there are like other types of functional commitments. So there are like multilinear commitments. Here we have like several variables, but the degree is at most one. We can have like vector commitments. Here is like committing a vector and opening at a certain point. So it's not necessary a function. I mean, vector can be interpreted as a function as well. The best example is Merkle tree, and we can have like inner product commitments as well. Just giving an intuition, it's not going to be a correct example for functional commitments or polynomial commitments. But if we think of like a Merkle tree, Merkle tree is something similar as well. So in a Merkle tree, you have just values. These are the values, and they are just hashed together in pairs. So that's like a hash function. That's like a hash function. And that's like a hash function, and so on and so forth. And then basically you just hash these values again together, and then again, and you have just one Merkle root at the top. So that's like a Merkle tree. And you can think of Merkle tree as like committing to a vector. So this is like a vector. We can say that there are like a couple of values here, like there's like here 8, and there's like 7, and there's like 11, and there's like 16, and there's like 22 and 24, and so on and so forth. So we have just one vector here, and then basically we just commit this vector one point, to one hash value with this Merkle tree. And then we can think of that the prover creates this Merkle tree, sends the root of the Merkle tree to the verifier, and in this sense, this number vector is basically committed from the prover to the verifier. And of course, if you want to open it, then basically what we can do, of course, let's say we just want to open basically in 16, then what we can do, of course, then the prover has to send like 16, and then of course the Merkle values to the verifier, and then having these three properties 16, then basically if you just send these three values and 16, then the verifier can practically recalculate the Merkle tree itself, and then basically can be convinced that basically this element, this 16, was in the committed vector. So that's one way of thinking it, but we can even extend it. So let's say this is not just a vector, but this is a function, and this is a function in a way that like we commit like, so we just have a number. So this is like the first, this is like the second, this is like the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth element of the Merkle tree, and we just say that our function associates 1 to 8, 2 to 7, 3 to 11, 4 to 16, 5 to 22, 6 to 24, and so on and so forth. So we just commit this function again with a Merkle proof, and we say, hey, open. So if the verifier here says, hey, open for me this function. Again, this is already not just like a vector here, but we can say it's a function. Open me this function at point 4. Then the same algorithm can be used. So we can open like this Merkle tree, this committed function already at point 4, in a way that we just sent these hash elements to the prover, and the prover can be sure basically, and of course we send just 4 and 16s as well, and then the prover can be sure that basically that was the originally committed function, and then 4 was evaluated to 16, and then that's actually an evaluation of the originally committed function. Of course, this is just intuition. It's not efficient to do things in that way, but if you're familiar with Merkle tree, that's like a good intuition. So from a more not so Merkle tree is just an intuition. It's not a working example. If we look for like real examples, then one real example is like KZG, Skates, Zavarucha, and Goldberg KZG polynomial commitment scheme, and it works pretty heavily with polynomials, of course. And I have just one slide on that. I can share more information in the literature. But basically it's pretty tech heavy. I mean, it's not just tech heavy, it's pretty math heavy, I would say. Generally KZG works that way, that there's like a G generator point. It has like a pre-processing step, and the pre-processing step is somehow choosing a value of tau. This guy is here, tau. And of course, the pre-processing value should be deleted. If it's not deleted, then basically all proofs can be faked. But anyway, there are some techniques we usually say as power of tau that can help choosing this tau in a more like trustless way. But basically, we have this tau parameter, which is like a trusted setup parameter, and we just calculate coefficients of a polynomial. This is like g over the tau, g over the tau of 2, and so on and so forth. And then we have here the prover, and we have the verifier, and the verifier commits basically this function in a way that it evaluates g to the f tau, basically. And then just two things here. I mean tau is deleted, but the idea is that you can calculate this f tau value with the parameter. These are the parameters, and these are the coefficients practically for a polynomial. And another thing is that this commitment is just one number. So it's pretty small in a sense, and then it's basically constant size of the problem, which is quite interesting. So that's like the first step. The next step, verifier sends back basically that's like the verifier wants that the prover opens this committed polynomial at one point, and then basically the prover sends back some tricks with functions. The prover calculates some coefficient polynomial here, and then basically sends back some v value, and then v is the evaluation of the function at point u, and then the proof as well, which is g to the q tau, and q is a coefficient polynomial here basically. And again, this q tau can be calculated in a way that tau was already deleted at the beginning, but these g to the tau and so on and so forth coefficients are well known. And the verifier can basically evaluate things with like some tricky polynomial evaluations as well. Okay, so this is just a very high level. I mean, I didn't even try to go into the details. It's just if we want to cover that, that would take like 1 hour itself, and it's pretty tech heavy. So if there's interest for that, I can prepare it, but otherwise I would say I can likely share some literature on that, and then you can take a look of the heavyweight math yourself. So let's have one more slide, and then let's just try to investigate the ideas why it's good to have like functional commitments. What can we do? And then it's gonna be like a little bit like a preparation for the next session as well. So if you have like again a functional commitment, which is committing to a function from a prover to a verifier, opening that at one point and basically sending back basically the evaluation of that point, and then the proof that that point was really evaluated on that certain function, on that certain committed function. So one example is what we can do. We can basically test if a polynomial is 0. To check if a polynomial is 0, what we can do is that we just pick one point randomly, and if we pick one point randomly, and if that evaluates to 0, then the whole polynomial is 0 with a very high probability. It's just because a polynomial has like just a few roots, but the domain might be pretty big. So if that's like a d-degree polynomial, it has like d roots, and if the p domain is much bigger than the degree of the polynomial, then choosing the random point evaluates to 0 with very low probability, unless the whole polynomial is 0 itself. Okay, so basically it's a very simple test to test if the whole polynomial is 0. We just pick one point very randomly. It's important that that's gonna be random, and if that was chosen randomly, and if that evaluates to 0, then the whole polynomial is probably 0 with a very high probability. Okay, so this is like the idea. We just commit the function, the verifier just picks one input pretty randomly, and the prover sends back basically like the evaluation, and if that evaluation, of course, with the proof, and then if that evaluation is 0, then basically we can conclude with very high probability that the whole polynomial, the whole function that was committed is 0 itself as well. So why it's a good thing? It's because, I mean, it looks like useless for the first run, but it can be a basis of many other different checks. So for instance, we can test if two polynomials are equal. So we can say we don't commit just one polynomial, but we commit two polynomials. It's like f and g, and we just want to create a test if f and g are equals, if the two polynomials are equals. And then just based on the polynomial 0 test, we can just pick one item, one input for these two polynomials, again pretty randomly. And then if at this point, basically the two polynomial or two functions evaluates to the same value, then we can say that the two polynomials are equal with very high probability. And it's based on the zero test. So you can just think it over. It's because we can have something which is the f minus g polynomial, and if that evaluates to zero, that practically means that the two polynomials are equal. So basically, it can be implemented with a with a zero test, basically. And we can have some advanced stuffs here as well, like the sum check. It means that, for instance, we have a polynomial that is committed, and then we just want to make sure that some of the input values of the polynomials are evaluated to a given value. And we can have something which is a prod check, which is a product of certain input values evaluated to a polynomial. These are similar games or similar steps that you can see basically here. And I have one more slide at the end, one last idea, and that's the so-called polynomial transformation. So up to this point, these protocols seems to be interactive. It's because there are like three ways of communication. I mean, there's one step committing a function. The second one is sending back like x, and the last step is like opening the polynomial at one point. So these protocols seems to be interactive, but of course we don't like interactive things. So to transforming actually an interactive protocol to a non-interactive, we can have something which is the Fiat-Shamir transformation. And it is useful to transform this random challenge step from a non-interactive protocol to an interactive one. And it looks that way, that basically we can use that in the following scheme. If we have the prover first generates some random value, and the commitment, and sends it to the verifier. So this is the first step. The second one, the verifier responds it with a unique random value. So this should be random. And then the prover computes the final proof based on the commitment and challenge. So that's the last step. So we can basically eliminate this step because the prover could actually choose this random value as well. He should basically choose this randomly. So we want the prover to choose this random value in a way that it's gonna be really random, and it's not gamed basically by the prover. But for instance, the prover can realize it with the help of a cryptographic hash function. So for instance, if the prover just has like the commitment itself, and then makes a hash of that commitment, and then we just evaluate the last few bytes or bits of this hash of the commitment, then that should be basically random, and that should be realized in a way that it can't really be mocked, or it can't be really be faked from the prover. So that's the idea of a Fiat-Shamir transformation. And in that way, what we have here, we just eliminate this middle step, which is from the prover choosing basically a random value and sending to the prover. Instead, what we have here, we have just the y. We have a proof, but the x opening is, for instance, chosen by the prover as well in a way that it's like a hash function. It's like a cryptographic hash function of the commitment itself. And then basically that's all. We have in this way like eliminated most of the interactions basically in this protocol. Anyway, just one idea. Basically, in the last session, the quiz, I mean, it wasn't quiz, but there was a challenge at the end. And the challenge itself was like choosing or just thinking over if the example of Alibaba cave can be realized in a non-interactive way, because the idea of Alibaba cave, or the game of Alibaba cave, is pretty much interactive. And then basically I mean, there wasn't any successful solution. I mean, I'm not quite sure if there exists a successful solution to make like Alibaba Cave game to a non-interactive one. But if you still working on the problem, then I would suggest to think over something similar. If there's like a clever way of choosing the path from which Alice should come back in a way that it can be realized by a hash function, and then it is realized in a way that there's no interaction between Alice and Bob, basically in that game. So I would say that was the content for today. I still did not finish the quiz. So there's going to be a quiz perhaps in a few days. I will post it basically on the Discord channel, and I have some links and resources at the end. I'm going to post everything into the Discord channel itself. And I would say that was for today. It was taking usually a bit longer than I expected. Theoretically, we have like 2 more minutes for questions and answers, but I mean, I'm sure we can take it longer. So if you have any questions or comments or ideas, just feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to chat it basically in the chat, and then I just try to answer everything. Yeah, it might happen that my voice was my network was not fully perfect. Yeah. Yeah, I will share the Merkle tree ideas basically in the Discord channel as well. Yeah. I mean, the Merkle tree commitment is just like an intuitive idea. It's not a fully usable things. Yeah, and there's one question at the end. What's the roadmap for self-sovereign identity using ZKP, zero-knowledge proofs? It's a pretty complex question. Generally, there's like there's like a verifiable credentials scheme where you can where zero-knowledge proof is usually used. And then there's an idea that you can verify your verifiable credential in a way that there's a zero-knowledge proof involved. So basically, like not all of your of your driving license properties are revealed. Just some summary or just specific information on that, and it's called as presentation basically in verifiable credential scheme. That's what usually used in self-sovereign identity in terms of zero-knowledge proofs, but again, that's like a pretty big application idea or application area. So, are there any more questions? Again, generally, it's pretty much a little bit like presentation focused, but I would then encourage everybody just to join the Discord channel and then have some ideas, comments, I mean, brainstorming questions and discussion there. I mean, we can just likely have it basically anytime. It's not so limited than these sessions basically. Okay, so if there's no more questions, then I would say thank you very much for your attention for this month. And then let me just continue the discussion, the learning group, the chatting, or just brainstorming in the Discord channel. Otherwise, let me just meet next month where we continue the learning groups with interactive Oracle proofs. Again, it's gonna be again a little bit more theoretical, but that's gonna be my last theoretical or deep theoretical presentation, and then from May we just gonna continue with like circumprogramming. So thanks a lot again, and then well, see you next month.